Shall we get started? And then if she joins us, great.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, I call the special meeting of May 5th of the Wenatchee School Board to order. And yeah, go ahead and get started. I don't know if you received any questions from the board.
I did not.
Since the last meeting.
No, I have not received any questions. So if you want me to just give an update and then kind of work questions from there.
That'd be great.
Okay. Like every week, we've been really busy. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we're eternally grateful for our educators for the work that they're doing, really transforming learning and engaging our students in a very different way, but they're being incredibly successful doing that. Today we had another opportunity. This is opportunity 3 with Jeff Utek, bringing us different ideas, different concepts around how to engage, how to teach, how students are going to learn and be more and more successful in this online learning environment. Every session with Jeff, I walk away absolutely impressed with his background and experiences and how he's able to convey that to our educators each and every time we're together. Today, he really walked the entire group through. I think at one point we had roughly 640, 50 people on for the vast majority of the conversation. And he was working through Flipgrid and he really wanted people in that moment to work through a Flipgrid and post a video of themselves around a celebration, around a shout out to a teammate. But the idea was just to make sure people were getting more and more comfortable with the tools that students are becoming more accustomed to be engaged with. So really pleased with today's PD. Again, the chats that we have running during this conversation with Jeff, and Ron facilitates it, does a fantastic job. But the comments were very positive, very thoughtful, good questions continue to arise. They're becoming more specific. It's interesting to just watch the questions that are coming in from the first session with Jeff to today's session. First session was, oh my goodness, how do we do any of this? Today, it was very specific around just techniques, around a platform teachers are using. So that tells me our educators are becoming more and more comfortable. And we overlay Jeff's work with work that Ron and his team do on the IT side of delivering continuous PD on different platforms, as well as the learning and teaching team. Mike and his team are offering open office hours as well, supporting our educators in different fronts. So we're really trying to make sure that our educators have the support and tools necessary to do that work that they see. Ron, I'd open it to you for a moment, anything that I missed, and from Jeff's session. Again, it was just outstanding. I can't hear you, Ron. At least I can't hear you.
You need us to unmute you, Ron? Be happy.
Laura was waiting for that one.
I'm on it.
There you go. I'll put my headphones on. Let's see if that helps.
Better.
My microphone wasn't turning on for some reason, but it is what it is. So yeah, Jess did a really good job just reemphasizing what we're already trying to do with staff. So we didn't want to overwhelm anybody, obviously. We wanted to celebrate their successes, but also that message is stay the course, which is they're doing really good work and they've learned a ton and they've drank from the fire hose of knowledge the last month. So we're going to continue to just chip away at new tools over time, but we really want to emphasize the core concepts of having students create, having students show learning, giving them multiple ways of having students show learning so that we can transfer all of this PD, all of this information into future years, because this is not a COVID type situation for us. From my perspective, this is a golden opportunity to bring people forward in their thinking and bring people ahead with their own professional development so that they start to really understand how we can leverage these tools we've been using for a while. But I think teachers now are seeing a different purpose for some of these tools, and they're not just shiny objects, and they're seeing great things from kids. So just really happy with his ability to emphasize what we would like to emphasize, but also just his connection with the world community and how respected he is on the world stage of this type of learning. And I think we're getting probably the best training anybody in the world's getting.
Yeah,
which is
I would concur. Jeff, and not boastfully, told our educators today that, he's been invited to the UN. He presented at the UN to over 137 countries around online learning and this type of work. So this is not just a local expert. This is somebody who's called upon internationally to support. He was the only K-12 educator in that group. And again, he didn't say it boastfully. He just talked about his experiences and the experiences that countries around the world are sharing with him, and he's sharing with them. So it's just really cool, unique opportunity to partner with somebody who's been on the world stage on this front. And I'd also echo what Ron said. I just see our educators starting to have these really big aha moments. It's one thing when you hear about it or read about it, but it's a very different thing when you're able to experience it for yourself, when you're applying some of these ideas yourself. And then you have people on the side helping you coach, and you starting to gain some experience and opportunities with these different ideas of putting out concepts for our students and letting them, set what's his terminology, Ron? The pace, the timing.
Pace in the place. Yep.
Pace in the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our kids are starting to find their pace and their place in their time to be able to do this work, which is different. So it really takes that educator back a little bit to be that true facilitator. And this is one way that we're really seeing that true facilitator come through. Martin and I were talking before the start of the meeting was how important structure is in this environment. Structure from an educator delivering, here are the things that we're looking for. Here are the big learning opportunities. Here are the concepts we're trying to go for. But no longer do we have 45 minutes for you to lecture to your students. You have these small mini lessons, these 10, 15 minutes of video, if that. 15 would be an exceptionally long video, but they're really tight. So teachers are having to deliver their information concisely and thoughtfully, so students are able to take on what the teachers have sent to them and really grapple with the thinking and the work behind it.
Yeah, the rest of you may have seen everything, but from a board's point of view, I think this morning we were dealing short term in tools and adjustments for what we've got to do between now and June the 19th. And then there were like two giant steps into the future where actually Jeff got really excited, and he was dealing with concepts that, and the tools would be the concepts were ones that we would use in the really long term. And that part I thought was formidable from a board's point of view. It was actually excellent all the way around.
Yeah, he definitely got excited on a couple of things today.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Board members, any questions on that kind of the PD structure? And then we'll kind of dive into some other topics.
No, but I think you just touched on something I was hopeful of, that, this training becomes an opportunity for us in the end. And it sounds like, at least in some part, that is going to come to fruition. So we can take a positive out of this, or more than one positive. That's a great thing.
It is. Yeah, that's what I shared with on Coho Radio this morning is if we walk out of the COVID experience and we did not learn anything, that's failure on our part. That's true failure where we did not embrace this opportunity. It's not something anybody wished for us, but it is still this opportunity to think differently about how we deliver instruction and how students learn. So I'm with you, Laura. There are a lot of pieces that we're taking and going to move forward on.
Well, I just want to thank the district for kind of moving forward and getting the PD for all of this, kind of all the different online platforms. We know that our teachers have variable levels of experience when it comes to technology, and sometimes our students are kind of ahead of certain individuals, right? So so I'm really glad that the PD has hopefully brought all our staff to be in a more confident position in terms of teaching their materials online, despite the challenges that might still be there. But it's hard to, I think, get comfortable in front of a camera and make your lesson down to a really concise piece. So I'm thrilled that we have experts who are helping them hone those skills for our students, and our students are getting better at those skills as well with the Flipgrid and other types of tasks. So I think, you know, everybody's gaining lots of skills in technology right now, and this may not go away right away. So it's good that we have these skills. So I'm glad that professional development is helping not just our teachers, but our students, obviously, as a result. So
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So tagging on to that work, at our last COVID board meeting, one of the pieces that came up was this idea of, you know, we've talked about roughly 20%, you know, and that's give or take 5 to 10 at individual schools, but overall about 20% of our students we're not engaging with. So one of the pieces that we're working on and we'll roll out to our principals this Thursday at our regular principal meeting is just further clarification around attendance and what does that look like for our staff, and making sure that we have a tiered approach to making sure that we're connecting with our kids. You know, from our you know, kind of that tier one where our educators are that front line trying to connect with students either virtually or phone calls, emails, postcards, whatever it is, to try to really engage, to that tier two where the building principals, the APs are engaged along with our social workers, our counselors, the family liaisons, to connect with their families, students, to that tier three. And all these pieces are being documented into Skyward. So we end up understanding the demographics, who's connecting with us, who's is not, is it part of our special populations, is it not? All of those questions the board members were asking 2 weeks ago, we really have honed in on how to formalize our structure, because prior to that, everybody was kind of doing it their own way. And what we want is that it's documented into Skyward. That way we can run reports easily and we have the information to us. So we're going to start that process starting next week. We're going to review it with our principals on Thursday, go through all the steps, make sure we haven't missed anything. It's out there now for them to review. And then Thursday, we will come together and have consensus on this is what it is, this is where it's going. IT's been really involved in it because it has to do with the tracking. How do we do it easily so it's not this laborious task that we're having our teachers or our principals or social workers or anybody do, but it is working through the fields fairly easily. And that way district office can run reports to say, okay, you know, out of that 20% who are not engaged with us, and again, I'm just making up a number, 7% of them are students of a second language, or 20% of that 20%, 20% of them are students who are receiving free and reduced services, lunches. So we're going to have a much better data pool in the coming weeks. So excited about that work. And that's honestly kudos to the board for pushing my thinking a little bit more on how can we disaggregate that data even further. So I appreciate that. Like I said, we'll start that next week, and then we'll start pulling data every week after that to have a better understanding of how do we engage, because the OSPI has been clear last couple of weeks that they are going to be asking about that. And they're going to want to know, what are we doing? And we have to have a plan for those for our young students who have not engaged us yet.
So
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
are we going to hear that update then at next week's board meeting then, Paul?
It'll probably be it will probably be limited, because it would be, so starting Monday we'll have the expectation. So it'll probably be that following COVID meeting where I'll have my first data pull.
Great.
So in addition to the demographic data, are we going to be digging into other factors besides demographics that are impacting a student's ability to engage, and how are we tracking? Those aren't traditional things maybe that we track. So
Correct.
how are we going to?
So once we have those conversations with the families, that's when we're going to be able to have even deeper conversations. So it would be tracked on our Skyward, so we know who everybody is. But then, as you're saying, the more important piece is, why not? Why haven't you connected, and what are those obstacles, and can we help you overcome some of those obstacles? And there may be some that we're not going to be able to overcome. That, you know what, I'm having to babysit, I'm having to do this, I have to work, all these different pieces. But at least we have an understanding of where that young person is at, and the possibility of supporting him or her. So yeah, that's ultimately the key to all of this, is let's have a conversation with the young person who's not engaged, or the family members who know that the person is not engaged. The why is going to be the critical piece.
Yeah. In regards to like the high school, are you guys tracking how many periods are there? 6, 5, 4?
Yeah, for the 4 periods, and then trying to make sure that, so it'd be by teachers first. And then, so first hour teacher, Paul's not showing up, or has not been a part of, the English course for the past 3 weeks. So that information gets pushed to the principals, and we still can't connect with them. And then it just slowly tiers up.
Because I'm wondering if we'll see students maybe checking into their core content courses versus their elective. I actually ran into a teacher at Safeway the other day who is not a core content teacher, and she expressed that she's struggling to get her kids engaged and to log in and check in. So then made me think, well, are students prioritizing their courses? I don't know.
We've heard the same thing, where a lot of the core content, especially at the high school level, is probably the primary driver. The elective courses, we're seeing a little less engagement there. So how do we deal with that? What I'm excited about is just having the raw numbers. Who's doing what, where are we at? So we can help our elective teachers, our specialist teachers, re-engage, and let our parents and our community members know that's still an expectation.
So the grading that we're changing, that's going to apply to all these electives and everything as well, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, for those high school kids. So that's a great point, Julie. So if Paul's not engaged in my PE class, it's going to be an incomplete. For a high school kid, every course matters. Every credit matters. So you can't just go without that credit. So we just need to make sure that we're really crystal clear with our messaging to our students. And one of the things that we've talked about is literally speaking, having video speaking directly to our kids. Okay, this is what this means. You have to engage, and you can't just engage once. That's not a substantial amount of engagement. You must engage on these topics with us, no matter where you're at.
And I think that's probably something as we focus more on the grades, that needs to be clarified a little bit as well, because I think when we started rolling out the online stuff, there was kind of the appearance that, you know, younger kids were only going to have the expectation of one class or something. In middle school, you were expected to do 2 classes a day. And so it's changing that now to where, you know, no, high school kids, you are expected to finish your classes, graduate, to the extent that teachers are putting them out there. So maybe it's a bit of a shift from what we first heard in some cases.
Yeah, I think from that first couple of weeks where we thought maybe it was going to be a short period of time that we were out, to the moment we were like, okay, this is an extended period of time. You must engage. Students must engage with us. So we've got to be really clear with our kids. I think we've done a nice job getting to our parents, but ultimately we've got to get to our secondary students and saying, you must engage. This is what it looks like. Again, for all those elective courses, you have to have those elective credit hours to graduate. So we don't want to lose a kid who's been participating in 2 or 3 of his core content areas, but not his elective course.
So I just have a question, because my high schooler actually does running start, so she only has 1 elective class. I'm guessing that the high school teachers are allowing in their class kind of different ways to engage. So maybe in office hours or Zoom meeting or completing these choice of assignments or something like that. Because, you know, again, if kids are, let's say they're taking care of younger siblings and they can't do a Zoom meeting for obvious reasons, then they know that they have other alternative ways of participation for the class, right? I'm hoping
Absolutely.
every teacher has kind of different strata of ways to participate, so it doesn't lock you in that if you haven't done this, you're not participating. But if you've engaged in at least some mode of that, you're considered engaged. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So literally at the top of our clarification document, it is, you know, this is how we know students are engaged. You know, work is being turned in. Students are logged into, you know, Clever at the elementary level using Google Classroom, or attending Opus office hours, or connecting with teachers through emails, phone calls, hard copies, you know, are being turned back in for some of our students who don't have the access yet. They are still doing some of the paper pencil routines, but yeah. And then we have a clarifying statement at the very end. If a student has not engaged in open office hours, but is still engaged in these pieces and turning in work, that's engaged. Mm-hmm. For the reason you said, it may not work in my schedule during your open office hours, but that doesn't mean I haven't been turning in my work, and that means I'm engaged.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's jump down here. I'm just going to go back to my doc here real quick.
I want to ask one question, Paul. Could you briefly describe, I mean, we focused a lot on, you know, secondary level, but could you briefly describe, we had an email, I don't know if the rest of the board saw it, but come out this week regarding kinder and lower elementary grade students. Could you briefly describe what their engagement looks like?
Yeah, it looks a little bit different from the standpoint of, so think about the primary. So our pre-K through 2nd grade is going to look a little bit different than our 3rd through 5th. So it is going to be more direction at the primary level, more explicit instruction at the primary level. What does that look like around, you know, early reading? It is one of the things that we are struggling how do we teach reading via Google, via any of the video pieces. And we're seeing some good examples of it across the board, where our teachers are really following back on. If the board remembers back to when Dr. Stacy Bain presented, and Sarah Walls and Amber Burks, where they talked to the board a little bit about the impact literacy. So they're using those same strategies to deliver impact literacy. They're doing similar pieces for our math. Students are engaged in, like I said, the iReady, the math components, the virtual pieces there. It looks a little bit different though. It is a piece that we continue to improve upon. So our students are becoming more engaged, but it's harder. I mean, that is the older students, we're finding more engagement there. We're also hearing from our parents who have younger kids that it is a little bit more challenging, because they have to be more of that teacher, that person by the side, as Julie may be able to attest to. It's different at the elementary level, and that it is what it is, that piece is.
So does it look like 9 o'clock, we go to our computer and we log into the Google Classroom, and the teacher appears and says, "Good morning, boys and girls, and today we'll be," no, doesn't look like that. What does it look like?
So it's still similar to our secondary, where you're going to have asynchronous, where we're going to deliver the instruction via video. And that's where the vast majority of the lessons are, where we're delivering it to them, they see it, they get it, and then they can attend the open office hours just like the secondary students. And that's where we're hearing a lot of questions are being asked during that time, a lot of clarification. Sometimes at the secondary level, it's a lot more of the social emotional, but at the elementary, there's definitely a lot more just questions. And we're seeing a few parents pop their heads in to say, "Hey, how do we do this? How's this working for us?" Do we have somebody?
No idea what that's like.
So yeah, it has a lot of the similar attributes. We just know it's more challenging at the primary level for our kids. So our teachers are being a little bit more explicit, not as open-ended concepts like we have with our secondary, making sure that it's, again, that structure where there's almost a checklist of pieces that need to be accomplished to be able to move on to that next piece, if that makes sense.
So Laura, if I can, because we do this now on a daily basis. The way it's working for my son who's in 3rd grade is, she'll have a weekly list of assignments that we're supposed to do. And some of them are pre-recorded videos that he'll go to and watch and do. And when he's done with his assignment, he'll either video himself with it or something, or send them back in. That's kind of a check that he's doing it and doing it well. And then throughout the week, the live type sessions are there's the 2 days of open office hours plus a 1 day, there's a class meetup, and where he can, interact with other kids from the class. And I assume most of the kids of his age are doing about the same thing. So they're trying to work in that live, but it's not, his teacher up there trying to teach a lesson to 30 kids trying to ask questions at the same time. Now, my daughter, who's at Foothills, it's a little bit different. They are trying to do some of the live interactive class, and the teacher sent out some helpful information about how kids can ask questions, so they're not talking over the teacher every time something comes up, because otherwise on these formats, the screens bounce around a lot when anyone makes a noise. So it's not the ideal for a live stream lesson, but they are trying to work in, clearly, especially at the older level, more live, real-time assignment work.
Great,
great examples. Yeah, that was perfect. Right from the teacher's eyes.
I'm paying attention.
Maria, you also have a young elementary age.
Yeah, and our teachers have been fantastic. So they actually posted on Remind Text a schedule, so we know actually what subject area we're working on every day. So Monday, today was math, so they will post a lesson, a video lesson, and then an assignment that matches the lesson. It's a pre-recorded lesson. So that's the math lesson for the day. And then there's an expectation that they do 20 minutes on iReady, which is tied to the math textbook. And then there's, I think, spelling. I don't know. We've added a couple things of our own, but it's really nice for us to know what subject area they're going to be working on every day, so that we can incorporate more if we need to. So yeah, it's been great. You turn in all the assignments through Google Classroom. Mine's in second grade. And then office hours, it's more of a class check-in time. Teachers, they meet 3 times a week. And I appreciate Mondays are evening. They meet at 5. Today was 1 o'clock, and then Thursday is at 10 o'clock. So they're all kind of varied. So if, a parent can't support their child at this specific time, then they can check in on a different day. But it's been really fun to watch the teachers interact with their students. We are at Lewis and Clark, so he kind of technically has 2 teachers. So it could be, sometimes it's basically 2 classrooms together in Google Meet. And they just basically go around and checking in how everyone's doing on their work, what they're working on. And today we had Ms. V, the librarian, check in with them. I think the counselor was on last week. It's kind of like, I love office hours for us, because it's kind of like he loves it, and he's working on his own, and we get to do stuff independently. And I know specialists also have check-in times once a week at a specific time. PE, art, music, so they have that. And then the librarian also has, we love Ms. V. She does story time. So I think they're every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So it's been really neat just to see them, incorporate just different aspects of, just making sure checking in, and, his teachers will have guests like today. They had Ms. V, the librarian. So yeah, it's been working out really good for us. So yeah.
Thank you. Michelle, your kids are a little bit older, right?
Yeah, they're middle school, and I have one in high school, but she's a running start. So it's my 2 in middle school. So I did have a question for Paul. So between the different elementary schools and the middle schools, is there a chance for like the 6th grade core collaboration, so that we have some consistency amongst the elementary schools and the middle schools, or is it kind of by each school? How are they doing it?
Early on, it's by each school, but Mike and his team, Sarah and Amber Burks and Nadia and that whole team are working together to have that vertical and horizontal teaming across the district. So we're having more consistency and making sure we're checking in and seeing what are those essential standards that we're teaching across the board. Where are we at? How are we doing with those pieces? So that's in the early stages. We started that late last week. We'll continue that this week. And I think our parents will see that consistency continue to rise as we go down this pathway.
Yeah, I think that ties in with the comment that Laura, you had made earlier about, was it about amount of kindergarten homework? Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah.
So, if we can have maybe consistency from building to building on our elementary level and our middle school level, I think, we will start to see those differences, and hopefully more evenness in our, even though we're using the same curriculum, the iReady and Wonders, things like that, but more consistent instruction between the different buildings. So hopefully this will be part of that. So
I think over time, we'll see that. We'll definitely see more consistency across the grade levels throughout the district. So yeah, I think just more conversation, more collaboration to really tighten those pieces up.
Yeah, I think, in a perfect world, if we knew this was the way it was going to be all the time, you'd have one math teacher doing one math lesson and everyone would learn the same math lesson. And so I understand we've got teachers with contracts and we're telling them you need to keep working to fulfill your contract. So they're doing individually what they can, what they would do for their students. It would be interesting to see if this develops as kind of a long-term model, maybe an optional model, if we can get some sharing of those resources between the teachers. This is a good, so-and-so did a good math lesson. Let's put it out to all foothills.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your teacher only requires one, but for parents and students who want more enrichment or other options, because I know we're doing the minimum right now just to stay going. But, as this becomes more of an option, even going forward, or as we become more, functional in this, it would be neat to see some, the availability of these resources sort of open up and work with them like that.
Yeah, no, I think the evolution of this will continue to just give us more opportunities to collaborate and think differently about how do we instruct students who are learning, 6th grade mathematics, 2nd grade, the standards in 2nd grade under language arts, and what does that look like for us across the board, and how do we do this collectively together? And I think opportunities like today with Jeff Utek bringing us together, where you have, over 600 D41 staff members, from administrators, teachers, and some paraprofessionals coming together. So we're starting to build that level of consistency. How do we use our tools? What should we be teaching? How do we hold people and students accountable in this virtual world? So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. You both that, yeah, over time, I think we're just going to keep getting better at this. But yeah, and Laura kicked it off with this, there's a wide spectrum of knowledge around where we're at on from the tech to even just how do I instruct. And I think Michelle was the one who said, from just being on the screen, that was hard for many people. Like, this is the last thing I want to do is make a video of myself and put me out there. So yeah, we're evolving each and every day for the better, I believe.
Yeah. That everything we've been talking about is for families with broadband.
Yep. So you teed me up. I appreciate that. That was perfect. Last week we had another really productive meeting with our group of community leaders on this topic of connectivity. From the PUD, the city of Wenatchee, local tel, different people from the government legislative branch of the government, really trying to come together to be very thoughtful. So we really pushed the agenda hard to say, okay, who has what available to our community members? That was number one. So everybody's sending all of their information to Ron. The PUD's already done a nice little pinging of where they're setting up theirs. So we're incorporating that work into this larger Google map of where we have these large hotspots. All of our schools have those hotspots that radiate out into our parking lot. We're working with the ESD, a company K12, K20, I can't remember who it is. Ron can chime in here, who they're giving us some more access to this, a more powerful, amplifying our Wi-Fi a bit more. But we're also just making sure that we have this map, kind of what I talked about last time. So we're not duplicating any efforts anywhere, and we're not overlaying the Wi-Fi on top of somebody else's Wi-Fi and wasting time, money, and effort. So that's that first piece that we really worked hard on. The second piece is a long-term solution around how do we, again, lack of a better term, how do we do a better job of bundling and saving so our community members know you may be spending this much on your cell phone, but did you know if you did this with LocalTel, with Charter, with whomever the company is, we can do the same thing and you're going to have greater access to Wi-Fi for similar cost, if not even lower cost. But the hard part is getting all these people together, you know, and still the PUD to drop their service charges. LocalTel has dropped their install fees, because those other those are those other hidden fees. You know, LocalTel may be saying, or Charter may be saying, you know, it's free, but there are other hookup charges that we have to kind of get away from this period of time. So what we're trying to do, we've asked all the marketing people in this group to come together and really create a thoughtful marketing plan to go out and push out into our community. And that's from our, pushing it out electronically to posters out at our sheds, posters at our stores, and just different areas to communicate this, to videos. And again, Our Value, Our Future, who has a nice Latinx community chain of communication out there, they've agreed to help push it out. Every one of the partners have agreed to help push it out. So Guada, Jenny, forgetting Jenny's last name, Ron.
Rojanastatian.
Yeah, I wouldn't even forget it. There's no way I was going to say that. So Jenny and Diana are taking lead on those pieces to make sure we get all the information, and really leaning on the companies though, because that's not our forte. We don't know what the whole bundle and save is. So we're really leaning on LocalTel. We're leaning on the Charter. We're leaning on everybody to tell us, okay, how best to explain this to community members so they understand it, and how to make those calls and how to ask the right questions. So it's a little more challenging because, again, what we continue to hear from the PUD and LocalTel, most of our homes and most of our apartment complexes have those boxes on the side of their houses. So they're ready for connection. So we have great fiber, connectivity throughout. It's still just, it really is that financial means. Can I afford to hook it up? Can I afford to pay for it? But I know with this group of individuals, I think we're going to be able to solve this problem sooner rather than later. I'm proud of where we're already at with the work that Ron and many others have done to kind of ping the areas that show us where current Wi-Fi is at. So Ron, you want to talk a little bit about what K20 has done for us, and then any other pieces on the map?
Yeah, you hit most of it there, Paul. Really, NoaNet is the company behind some of the K20 work. So they're the ones that are donating some equipment. We're not sure yet. They haven't been very clear. Are these loaners or are they forgiven or gifts? So we're going to find that out. We're going to install those on some of our sites where we had just a harder time with construction getting Wi-Fi far out in the parking lot. So these will get us farther out there to make it a little more convenient for access. So that's a good news piece that has come out recently. The map, we're continuing to add to that. It's on our continuous learning page, and some companies are highlighting it on their pages. We're just still in the data gathering, like Paul said, really doing our best to put these spots on there. I stepped up and said, hey, just send me your spots and we'll put them on there. And so wherever we can do this, I have a feeling once, we cross our fingers on businesses starting to reopen, we're going to even add to this, and I hope continue it over time, because this is a tool, even down the road, knowing where these Wi-Fi hotspots are, eventually in coffee shops and in businesses. It's been a vision of mine for a long time to have this kind of resource for our kids and families, especially kids that can drive around and go to places to do homework, etc. So I'm hoping this can be a long-term benefit that comes out of this situation. And then I think the only other thing I would add that is we're directly contacting those, it's 4%-ish families, and like Paul said, trying to be proactive on having a conversation. How can we help you combine cell phones and internet, and what do you have, and just really having a dialogue with them and understanding what the issue is, if it's prioritization or if it's income, and finding those programs for them if we can to help them out. Because I think the PUD, last I checked, also is waiving some bandwidth fees to the ISP. So I think it's a trickle down effect with a lot of different companies that are going to benefit us in the long term. The unfortunate thing is, and I think Paul has been really clear about this, it's not a fix that's going to happen tomorrow. It's a process it's an iterative process over the next couple of weeks, unfortunately, or a few weeks. So that does put some of our kids at a disadvantage, but I think we're reaching them, connecting with them as best we can in lots of other ways to help facilitate that, and looking long term. And hopefully this isn't an issue in the future if we get into this situation again.
One of the pieces that I just add and then open it up to questions. I just, the last piece, Martin, and then I hand it over to the board member for questions. Again, I just want to highlight our staff. So Oscar on Ron's IT team, making these personal phone calls. Our classified staff members who are bilingual, stepping up and working with Oscar and Ron to make these calls, and us creating it, the team, not us, me, not even close to me. Others asking people to really come up with a really quality script that helps them walk parents and community members through the process. But our staff is engaged. You hear a lot about our teachers, doing the work, but also our classified staff members beyond our nutritional service and our bus drivers. They're working. They are out there working. I know other districts may not, but I'm telling you, the Wenatchee School District, our classified staff members are stepping up and really helping out. Kelly from our HR team, Katie from the HR team, they really organize the groups, and they send out, here's this group, this is the group working. So I also want our community members and our board members to know that, yes, we are paying our staff, and every one of us are eternally grateful for that. But I want our board to know that our staff is stepping up in really unique ways that are way outside of their general, job description, like, what Ron was talking about, making those personal connections around IT. And for many of our classified staff members, that's way outside of their bandwidth to be doing that. But Ron and Oscar are supporting them, walking them through, and how important it is to have our bilingual staff members be able to do this. So we don't have to say, okay, oh, wait, we're going to have to call you back again when we have a Spanish speaker on the phone. No, right now we're going to be able to have that conversation with us. So I just another way of highlighting our really incredible staff who want to help our family members. Martin?
Two questions for Ron. Are we really only 4% totally off the grid? And do you have anybody using your parking lots?
Our current data says we have about 240 students who have identified with us they have a connectivity issue for some reason.
That's not as
so. That's about a little over 4.5%. Yeah. So, like we've said in past meetings, that might not be everybody who has that issue, but that's our best data currently.
Okay.
And that's really in line with a lot of national averages and a lot of averages around rural areas. If you add the numbers together, it seems very overwhelming nationally even, but at 4% across 1 million people, that's a lot of kids, disadvantaged for some reason. So I don't want to make light of the number, but it's not astronomical. It's not a huge ask for us as a community to tackle that quantity of connections. As far as who is using our Wi-Fi, the PUD and the ISPs are going to be tracking that. They're curious. They want to know, are we spending a lot of time, money, energy, and effort and not getting a lot of gain for that? So I think they're going to be tracking that more heavily. We haven't really looked at that from our perspective. From a data gathering point, it could be curious, but we haven't made that a priority at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
So I remember in past discussions, and I have heard over time, that there's a trust issue, especially in Latinx families who may have family members who are not yet citizens. And so I'm curious if you have run across that during your contacts so far, and how we're going to be addressing that. Students who are in families that, you know, we just mentioned the word tracking in regards to internet use, and that could possibly raise a red flag. And so yeah, just want to know how we're going to.
Great question. So why it's important to have Our Value, Our Future on our group that has Teresa Benito on it, is this understanding that they've created this really cool network that has been working to put out COVID related material almost on a daily basis. And their readership, because it's coming from family members, people they trust, they're opening that information and they're accessing that information. So we're tapping into that network. We're tapping into the individuals who community members trust, because you're spot on, Laura. If they don't trust, they're not going to reach out to us and say, oh, we're going to come into your home and we're going to connect internet for you. It is a huge trust factor. So we need to lean on people who've done this and they've been successful. Now, the difference is, somebody's going to have to go into the home, and that's different. So that's a whole different piece than just opening something and reading information or watching a video for a moment or two. So it is a whole new ball game. So I'm not 100% sure what that's going to look like when we get there. But I know we've got good partners who are walking us through and showing us a different way of doing it than just the traditional broad push out. Even if it were just posters in our push out, this is a different approach because it's more that familiar idea that I know you, I trust you, and I'm willing to open my doors to you. But there's a huge but.
Mm-hmm.
Until we do it, and until we go down this pathway, we're gonna learn a lot in the coming weeks. Once we roll this out, once we have our communication plan, once we have our Wi-Fi mapping all done, and then we really push all this information out, that's where we're gonna learn. Do we close that 4% gap? And then if we're down to 2%, why haven't that 2% connected with us?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering if that 4% is going to maybe get a little bit bigger once we start connecting with students as to why they were not checking in. I think a lot of our families rely on what do you call them? Cards to load money into their cell phones, not necessarily on a unlimited plan. And so the initial survey said, yeah, we have access to internet or whatever through phones. But now I think I'm really interested in the data as to why these students are not checking in and how does that connect to that 4%.
Yeah, Maria, I think this next level, because there might have been confusion about what the document was saying, all of those pieces that we're going to start pushing it a little bit further and deeper to have an understanding. Because we still, when I look at our data from a week ago from our principals and we're still roughly in that 20%. Why aren't you engaged with us? And again, that could be for a myriad of reasons. I am not saying that it is just technology, but we got to dig into it. We got to understand that, because that's still a heck of a lot of kids who have not engaged with us.
100%.
All right, I'll move us along.
Okay.
I'm just going down. Graduation, we continue to have good conversations around graduation. What is that going to look like? The principals, in coordination with Eastmont, with Lance over at Eastmont School District, and more importantly, our students, we believe, will be writing an op-ed that will be in this coming weekend or next weekend's paper around what they would really want. And obviously their preference is to do the traditional, that every day that goes by, that becomes slimmer and slimmer of an opportunity. So we continue to move towards that virtual graduation. What is virtual graduation? And Diane and the principals, Mike and others have really been working hard at creating a quality virtual graduation and working with our partners to make sure that we do it as well as possible, but it's going to look very different. There's other ideas out there, but we are going to engage Barry Kling, the Director of Health for Chelan County, one more time, see if his thinking is any different based off the last conversation. I doubt it. He was so adamant that we've got to be careful, even more careful. And when we just saw, I just saw national news yesterday, the University of Washington is one of the lead modelers out there, and they're changing their modeling because a lot of people aren't following the protocols that are put in place. So they're, the number of infections, the number of deaths, they see that rising. So we have to be leaders, even though it's not a fun place to be, to say we're not going to do things like we've done in the past. We're going to have to do these virtually. I believe that's where we're going to end up, but we're going to circle back with Barry Kling, make sure that we're all on the same page, because it's scary. Today's May 5th. things are happening, but what I'm proud of is that on our side of the river and across the river, we've engaged students at Westside, at the tech center, at the high school. We've engaged our kids and asked them, what do they want? This is their moment. So what do they want for this moment that looks very different than it has ever before? So we'll just continue to, hopefully I would say by probably next week, we've got to say, this is what we're doing and this is where we're at. Any questions there?
Nope, I don't envy the position of any of the administrators who are having to deal with that, but I am very heartened. I had a conversation with Eric Anderson yesterday that the students are really involved, or at least the ASB leadership team is really involved in hopefully going out and collecting input from their student body and bringing it back to the group. And so I think it's so important that it's student led, that students are having a big voice in what their graduation is looking like, and it sounds like that's happening. So
yeah, I'm really proud of them. Thank you for highlighting that, Laura.
Yeah.
Just kind of going down my list. I feel like that's kind of the big pieces. We're in early conversations at the district level around budget, but honestly, like Larry said to the board last week, so many unknowns. And I just got, this afternoon around 3:30, got off with the state superintendent, where he led all the state, all the superintendents across the state in a conversation. And one of the pieces that, they still haven't finalized, what does that Title I fund, because it's all going to be based off of your title proportionments, but there's still some disagreement on that. So how is that going to come out in the CARES Act? So there's still a lot of decisions that need to be made at the state level. And until the state makes some decisions, it's hard for us to really work with numbers, because we're guessing. And they didn't come out with their revenue projections like we thought they would. So that's still behind. So it's kind of a wait. It's a real waiting process right now for us to see things and where we're at. But hopefully by next week, we're going to have more information. But no, cabinet is talking. We're talking about the work. What does this look like? Where do we think we're going to be at with with basically the traditional model ending? How much savings from this fiscal year would we be able to put into fund balance that we normally wouldn't have been able to? Because one of the big keys is being able to increase your fund balance and really using your fund balance for what it is, an emergency, and it doesn't get any more emergent than the situation. But so we're really trying to be very thoughtful about what are those expenditures that are needed to start next school year, and what are those other expenditures that we can hold off on, so we can try to build the fund balance to support the work going forward. Because the other thing we know is this isn't going to just be a, it's not like a weather catastrophe where we had this situation that impacted us for 4 months, 6 months. We believe this is going to be something that's going to impact us for probably over 2 years of financial pieces that are going to impact the state. But until we hear from the state, we're kind of in that treading mode right now. But know that we're talking, we're thinking about things, but we do need some numbers from the state to solidify the work.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that's kind of our week.
Yeah. Paul, this is a nudge, not a question, and it feeds into you saying we have to wait, because I totally agree with that. But as we're looking ahead at budgets, we're going to have to address what's going to be different. What are the compensation changes that we're going to make? And I just sort of as examples, California, I was surprised to see the governor talking about opening schools early, and I'm not sure whether that's fact or fiction. And then the other place I was kind of looking at is Denmark is one of the earliest countries, and they started with their first few grades coming into schools. And I'm not going there. The nudge is, it's not just a budget for what we know, it's a budget for what we don't know. And we don't know how and how much adjustment compensation changing in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months to make up for whatever disruption we've had now.
I would agree.
And
one
I
of the
just would say
things
that's, that should be part of your work, but I also recognize you can't do it.
Yeah, but it's good to hear from the state superintendent say the same thing, that they're bringing together groups, some highly impactful groups that are literally looking at what's happening in other countries, what's happening in Japan, what's happening in South Korea, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in these countries that are bringing students back, and is it being successful, and really starting to monitor that. Yeah, because you're spot on, Martin. There are some countries who are saying, okay, we're going to bring back primary students and then start to engage again high school students, really having a hybrid. And and the state superintendent said, there are no guarantees that we're starting back up next August in a traditional environment. But he also cautioned, please do not make those plans. Let us kind of be the lead on this. Let us figure our piece out from an international perspective, so we can give you some guidance, some expertise of what have other countries, what have other communities learned when they slowly start to bring things back.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, back to you.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions from the board at this time? Okay, so next meeting is on Tuesday evening. We also have agenda planning on Monday the 11th. I have it on my calendar at 11 a.m. I'm not sure who is scheduled to be there. Great. And then also we have had an email about our audit, our exit conference, which is occurring on the 12th at 11 a.m. So that's a reminder for anyone else who has signed up to be in attendance at that.
Laura, a quick bit of business on the audit. One of the things the letter said is be careful not to create a board meeting out of it.
Correct.
And I think it was you, and I know I was one of the original ones. I think it was just two of us.
If we have
Correct.
other board members with a burning desire to come to the audit conference, then they've scheduled separate meetings, which is possible. So communicate with Paul and Kim if you wish to do that.
And we'll make sure all that information goes out to the full board.
Yeah.
As to their findings, all of that information will be shared with the full board.
Yeah, I would just say if you know that more than two of us are going to just special meeting, notice it, but I don't plan on going, so.
Yeah, we typically don't do an exit conference as a public meeting. The auditors would divide it into multiple meetings and have no more than two at a time. So if that's a desire, they have been willing to do that in the past. So anyway.
They're nice to you guys. They make my cities do it as a special meeting. They all want to go.
I'm not going to question the auditors. The auditors going to do what the auditor's going to do. Fine with me.
Depends
Okay.
on how big a trouble you're in.
Yeah, we are not in any trouble as far as I know. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting and see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.